I'm Crystal at the Dog Psychology and Training Center.
And I'm Eric. Same place.
We are going to talk about happy spring break, by the way, for those of you that have spring break this week. And for those of you who have it next week or had it last week, happy spring break as well.
Snuck up on us.
Yeah, it really did. Like, March is, I can't believe March is gone. Anyways, we are going to talk about how to get your dog to listen not only in your home, but out of the home as well. And that is a common, I don't want to say complaint, but a common
desire.
Yes, and we hear it a lot with families that come to us for training. Like 99.99% of dogs that owners who call us always say, my dog listens so well at home, but does not listen if we have company over, or we leave the house, or we are going downtown. It's like they're a completely different dog. And that is where we come in. So what it really boils down to is your dog listens when there's nothing better to do, but when there's something better to do,
exactly.
See ya.
Like if there's no competition.
Exactly, for their attention. Competition for their attention.
No competition.
And that's exactly what it is. So you have to practice. I always say practice, practice, practice. Building up those distractions in a controlled manner. So what do I mean by that? How do you build up distractions in a controlled manner by going downtown? Well, you start small. So if you're a pen and paper type of gal like myself and my husband, because this is his notebook that I took, write it down. Start with the easiest. Okay, Fido listens in the living room when my kids aren't present. He listens kind of when the kids are present. He doesn't listen at all when we have people over. He definitely doesn't listen if we go somewhere. So that is your beginner list, and put gaps between them as you write them out, because then you're going to start to fill in those gaps of what could be a little bit harder. What could be a little bit harder? And so for Fido listening in the living room with no kids present, having kids present is a little bit harder, but maybe that's too much. So maybe take it slow by having one child present who's actively training with you, so the kid has rules that they're going to help. And if you give them a job to do, kids will listen. They like to help. So we often use our kids for training. Our kids are not perfect with dogs. There are several times that my kids go up to a dog that I'm not comfortable with, and it scares me. So my kids are not, just because they're a dog trainer's kids, doesn't mean they're perfect. And so we still have to control the environments at which we expose our kids to the dogs that we have come in for training, because we want to make sure that everyone ends happy. We want our kids to be happy, and we want the dog to be happy. We don't want to set anybody up for failure. So starting with your living room, no distractions, possibly having a kid come in and sit down. Don't move. Maybe have that kid read a book, so they're sitting on the floor and they're flipping pages. Something to distract Fido. Maybe have that kid come sit down with a bag of potato chips and eat a bag of potato chips or popcorn. Or have that kid come sit down with its dinner plate and eat dinner as you're working your dog around your kid. So obviously you don't want to have your dog loose. Even in the house, you want to have him on a leash so you have control. You want to have whatever tools you normally use for training, whether that's treats, whether that's a prong collar, whether that's a remote trainer, or
whatever.
An air, the little air cans that make the psh sound. Whatever your normal training tools are, have them and be prepared. And that's the whole point of creating these scenarios, this distraction ladder, to get to that ultimate joy of taking your dog anywhere and knowing that they're going to listen, is you being proactive. So you have to be prepared. And if you are prepared the majority of the time, your dog will think that you're always in control. If you're not, if it's like 50-50 or more times than not they get away with naughty behavior, it's like a scale. Whatever weighs the most is how they think. So if they're getting away with all this naughty behavior, you're going to be like, yeah, this is good for me. But as you start to layer on successes in your side, that scale starts to tip. And now you have a dog that's listening in a controlled environment, working towards that point of your dog listening when you can't control the environment, but they don't know that because you're tricky. And you have thrown out every possible scenario and controlled it to make this a successful outcome. By controlling it, what do I mean by that? So working with those distractions, what are the typical things that you're yelling at your dog about when you have company over or when you go downtown? What are those challenges? Is it pulling on the leash? Is it holding a sit command? Is it staying in a down command? Is it holding a place command? That's what you're going to work on little by little. So let's say it's pulling on the leash. Your dog starts to pull when he sees people downtown. And he almost knocks you over, because that's legit, it happens. Start with your kids coming in and walking out as you have your dog on a leash. If your dog tries to pull towards the kids, you're gonna do a little tug back or turn and go the other way and say no, walk, and get that dog to focus back on you. And if your kid's walking in and out and your dog's like, psh, I ain't falling for that, every time I try to go to that kid I get in trouble, then have your kid run or walk into the room and then run out real fast. And that kind of plays on your dog's prey instincts to want to go chase, right? If something's running, we want to go. So having your kids run out. Again, you have your dog on a leash, so if they try to run after your kid or pull on that leash, you're there to tug back and say no, walk, and go the opposite direction. The other thing you can do is start to have your kid run into the room and then out of the room. Not quite up to your dog, but just into that room. So that's like maybe just through the doorway of that room and then running right back out. And if your dog's being successful, then make it a little bit harder. Have your kid get like a foot or two closer and then turn right there and run out. And for kids, it's very nice to use tools like laying a notepad on the carpet and saying, okay, run to this point and then run out. And after your kid's successful with that, then have your kid leave the room, grab the notebook, pull it 2 feet closer to where you and the dog are going to be, go back to your spot, and have the kid run to that new spot. And just keep building those distractions, making it harder and harder. And then have 2 kids be, playing this exercise for you. And then maybe all the kids, and then maybe having the kids come in with food in their hands, like one has a banana and one has a potato chip or a bag of chips, and making it harder and harder. And then once it's successful in your living room, go out into the backyard. The backyard is a familiar environment to your dog, but there's still so many things that you can't control. The squirrels, the bird, the smells that are wafting from 2 miles away. But it's a familiar environment that your dog gets to see every day versus the front yard. So practice outside, doing the same repetitions you did inside of having a kid come and sit down and eat, and then having a kid walk in and out, and then having a kid run in and out, and then having a kid run in and out with food. And then once you've thrown everything at this dog that you think, what else could he possibly pull for? What else could make him have that, what do you say, competition for my attention? What else could compete with my attention? And just keep throwing these things at your dog in a controlled environment. You're only spending, 10 to 20 minutes a day doing these little repetitions, and they're fun. And a side note, as a dog trainer, what's more important than getting your dog to listen to you is the relationship that you're building by spending this quality time working with your dog. Going back to the topic at hand. So working with those distractions in the backyard and then the front yard. And after you've mastered, again, starting with your kids sitting down with a bag of potato chips and then having kids walk and then having kids run, then have your kids maybe start 2 houses down and walk by your house and like rattling, a dog toy or squeaking a dog toy and eating out of a bag of potato chips. Obviously not at the same time at first, but building up to that point. And then having your dog your child, go back to that house and maybe get a skateboard or a bike, and ride past the house and keep building on these distractions. Maybe go for a walk, but if you have multiple kids, it works really well. But if you only have one, maybe invite some friends over, or your husband, or adult friends. It doesn't have to be kids, just kids are free labor. Some can be free. Some actually want money and compensation. But use them while you can. Having them, have stations along your path that you're going to take for your walk. And somebody could be, having an umbrella, not opening and closing it, because that is very scary for most dogs, but maybe just twirling it or spinning it in their hand. And then, maybe a couple houses down, there's somebody that has a skateboard that's just, kind of riding back and forth in front of a house or, on the side of the street by the sidewalk where you're going to be walking. And then maybe have a crowd of people that as you walk by, they're like, oh, what a cute puppy, and doing all those things that would make your dog want to break that attention that you're demanding of your dog, but having that competition, like Eric said, for that attention. And again, starting small and working your way up. And
I would say, in terms of the smoochy sounds, like this seems funny and is kind of silly when you're doing it. But even before you get to the point that you're going to try and ask your dog to do something like not pull on the leash or hold a sit command or whatever, with people doing that sound, like we'll practice that in the house first. So even like in a lower distraction or a place command, and you make the smoochy sounds, you know, so you you do all that goofy stuff that the person you've run into downtown is going to do, so that your dog kind of gets familiar with the idea that even though they are giving me attention and they seem like they want my love, like I'm still in a sit command or a place command or whatever it is. So then it's it kind of ramps them up for that, rather than just like them having to make the decision like, wait a minute, is this more important than my sit command? Because I know they told me to sit, but really they want me over there right now. So just kind of introducing them to that in a little bit less
right. So
intense.
don't introduce the smoochy sounds on a walk. Introduce them at home.
Right.
When I was talking about building up the distractions, that would have been a distraction that you could have pulled.
Yep.
So don't just do exactly what I'm saying. You know your dog better than us. You know what those weaknesses are going to be for your dog to throw at them. I'm just giving you ideas. And if you get to the point, like let's say you did the smoochies inside and it was fine, you did the smoochies in front of the house and it was fine, but that crowd of people smooching at your dog was too much, that's okay. Don't force your dog to keep doing it and fail. Maybe divide that crowd so that those people are maybe spaced out every 15 feet. And maybe they're not doing the smoochy sounds at first, but they're just looking at the dog, or maybe just like clapping their hands or bending over. And as your dog walks by successfully without pulling, then have them get more belligerent with their smooches to try to coax your dog over to them. And then make them a crowd again. So again, don't go too fast too soon, because then your dog's going to fail, you're going to fail, and neither one of you is going to like this exercise. Make it successful, doable but challenging. That's the key. It has to be doable but challenging. You don't want it to be too easy, because then you're bored and your dog's bored and you're like, this is dumb. But it can't be overwhelming to the point that it's impossible. So start slow and build your way up. So we started with the walk command. Eric kind of jumped into the place and walk command, but the same principle for the sit or sit and place command. The same principles is, one thing at a time. I wouldn't practice sit, walk, and down all in the same day with all these distractions. Just focus on one. And once you've mastered that one, then move to the next one. So how long would it take you to master this? It depends on your dog and you and the amount of consistency you're having. But typically, it could be anywhere from a week to 2 weeks. Maybe longer if you're not very consistent. But if you're on it, you could get to the next level in a week. And so that next level could be doing the same distractions, but maybe with a new command, like a sit command or a down command or a place command. For larger dogs, even little dogs, but especially larger dogs, we don't ask them to hold a sit command for more than a few minutes, just because it gets really uncomfortable for them. Most of our families, though, are very open with what the definition for the sit command is, and if their dog is sitting and lays down, they're okay with that. For them, the sit command just means stay in this spot. You can sit or lay down, but don't move from this spot. And so that would be okay if you did a sit command for a extended period, because they are allowed to lay down. But if your sit means sit and your down means down and they're not allowed to crisscross, I would not do 20 minutes of having your dog sit. That's a lot. You can, though, do 3 minutes of your dog sitting, and then maybe walk around for a few minutes and then go back to another sit distraction. But don't do like 20 minutes straight. That's not fair. And it's not comfortable. So
do you think there's a particular command that's the easiest for dogs to start introducing the...
Typically, it really depends on the dog. We kind of have our orders that we go through for most dogs. The first lesson's always walk, because that's usually... you got to have a leash on your dog to do the rest of the commands, and if your dog's pulling you all over, it makes the rest of the commands really difficult. So we usually start with walk, and then we start with sit, and then we work up to place. But there have been times that first lesson, I start with a place, because I just feel like that's what the family really needs. So it really just, I don't know if there really is a right or wrong order to go into, but you'll know if it's too hard. And if you're trying to do a command that's too hard, maybe try something else. Get a few successes under your belt, and then go back to that command. What else about getting your dog to listen everywhere? So we talked about so we're still in your neighborhood. The next trip, instead of going straight to downtown, would maybe be going to a pet store or a dog-friendly store on their off hours. So like not at the busy times of the store. So not, between, 5 and 7 where people are going, or 5 and 6 when people are just getting off of work and going to pick up their bag of food, but maybe right before closing. Most stores are really dead right before closing. Or if you don't want to be out that late, maybe early morning when the store first opens. And that gives you a successful environment to start. If your dog nails it that first time, okay, cool, go to a little bit busier of a time. If your dog's still struggling, that's okay. Spend a couple more visits. You don't have to go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I mean, you can space these out and say, I'm going to go Monday, okay, I can make it Friday, or I can't make it till next Monday. That's okay. You don't have to rush through these. Just as you have time available, start to test those boundaries in new environments. And then when you go to a store, you guys remember that game we played when we were kids, the hot and cold game? You're getting hotter, colder. And that's kind of the same principle with stores and distractions. So think of the front door, the main entrance you come in, that's the hot zone, right? That is a heavily trafficked part of the store. People are coming and going. Usually the colder areas of the store where there's not a lot of traffic is typically towards the back. So if you're going to a Home Depot or a Lowe's, and obviously this is only for dogs that don't have any human or dog aggression. Don't take your dog out in public without a professional if your dog has reactivity issues to other dogs and people. That is not safe for you or the dog or the public. This is only for dogs that are those happy-go-lucky, friendly attitudes that have not had a history of snapping or biting or attacking other dogs or people. So starting at the back of the store, maybe by the lumber department at a Home Depot store, and then working your way forward towards those front aisles, like the paint section that's typically more trafficked. At pet stores, typically by the fish tanks or dog food aisles are a little bit less trafficked than the toy aisle or the pet aisles. If they have live animals that they're selling, those can be a bit more busy. So start at those less trafficked areas, and you might spend your whole 15 to 20 minute visit back there.
By the betas.
Yeah, don't spend an hour at the store trying to get it all done in one time, because what happens is mental energy is far more exhausting than physical energy. So what I mean by that is 20 minutes of an intense training lesson exposing your dog to all these distractions, and your dog having to maintain enough willpower to say, no, I'm not going to pull on that leash to go say hi because I know better. That's very draining. I get very tired. So if you're there for a long time, your dog's going to start to be disobedient. Not because they're a bad dog, but because they're just brain dead. So don't push them to that extreme.
Yeah. Just because your dog can run for 2 hours doesn't mean they can do intense training for 2 hours.
Exactly. I mean, it is very, very true. You can run for, I can't run for 2 hours, but let's say a mile. I could maybe run for a mile and live to tell after. But, and it might take me, I don't know how long it takes to run a mile. But like Eric said, let's say an hour. I think an hour of running might be common. I'm not a runner if you can't tell. Let's say an hour of running. After you're done running, your brain feels more awake. Because what happens when you run is you release endorphins, your body starts to oxygenate through your blood because your blood's pumping a little bit faster, so your body's more oxygenated, your brain's more oxygenated, and it makes you feel more awake, right? More aware and more focused, versus if you're trying to study for a test or exam or learn something new, like a new language, it is hard to keep your eyelids open because it is so mentally exhausting.
Draining.
A brain is a muscle, and if you're not used to using your brain to learning new things every day, it does not like it. So keep it short and sweet. End on a high note. Don't end when your dog is dragging, when your dog is just like, oh, we have to keep working, because they're not going to enjoy it and you're not. Yeah. So end on that high note while you're still rocking it, and you're like, you know what, we're at minute 18 and he's still rocking it. Let's get out of here. That's perfect, because the next time you come back, he's gonna be like, yeah, we went there. Mom was so happy when we left because I didn't pull on the leash and I did really good, and he's gonna want to do that again. So start in those least trafficked areas, work your way to the most trafficked areas, and then maybe go to a park. Same thing. Again, outside, there's lots of things that we can't control in the environment, sights, smells, things that they hear, and dogs smell literally things from miles away. So if it's a windy day, not the best day to start outside. Start in a very, non-windy day, stagnant day. what's the non-windy
What's
term?
an antonym for windy?
I don't know.
Wow.
So when it's a calm day outside with no breeze
I need
in
a
the
nap.
air. And that would be the perfect day to start. And again, away from the main park. So if there's a playground and there's a dog park at this park, we don't like dog parks, don't go to a dog park. That's in a different episode that you can find. But start away from those areas. So the least trafficked area of the park. It might be a corner of the parking lot. That's okay.
Yeah. You might not even get to the park.
Right, so start there and work your way up to
okay.
that heavily trafficked area. So one of the places we like to go a lot is Conisty. And when we do private lessons or group socials there, we typically start back up on the hill, just past the playground, but not by the hiking entrance. I guess it's not a hill, it's a flat, grassy area. And then we work our way up to the hill that's between the playground and the dog park, but not by either. We're still a distance away.
Yeah.
And then we start to get a little bit closer to the playground and we work our way up to that. And if we're successful, we might actually have our dogs walking around the playground equipment as kids are playing. Again, only friendly dogs. If your dog hates kids, don't take them to a park. And don't let them near kids. And then the same thing for the dog park. We work our way up to the dog park, walking around the outside of the park, and then we don't go inside the park because we don't like dog parks, but maybe by that entrance we might be hovering there, so as people are coming and going with their dogs, we can have enough traffic to make that a distraction for a dog without letting our dog off leash in a dog park to get attacked by other dogs. No biased.
Yeah.
Cool. So, yeah, and then when you go downtown for the first time, again, go during less trafficked times.
Yeah, not
Early
like dinner time
morning.
on Saturday.
Right, that's suicide. We don't like doing that, and our dogs are well trained. Not because they're bad, just I don't like the traffic. But yeah, start least traffic times and work your way up to maybe a lunchtime before a dinner time. Because lunchtime is still busy, but it's not crazy. And then maybe a dinner time on like a Thursday night. And then maybe dinner time on a Sunday night before you go to a Friday or a Saturday night where it's much different. So, but yeah, I think that covers from your home, from your living room, out to the real world.
Real world.
Real world stuff. That's hard. That's hard to say. Say it 3 times fast. I dare you, and record yourself so we can see you. All right, thanks for joining us. I hope you guys, I thought that was really helpful for you guys and your dogs and getting them out of your house and into the world so they can go places with you. If you have any questions, as always, post them in the comments. If you haven't yet and you liked our video, share it. Ooh, new one. I got him. Share it and then subscribe. Share it so that your friends who maybe have dogs and have been maybe struggling to get their dogs to listen out and about, or maybe have been wanting to but are a little leery of the way their dog's going to act, this would be a perfect video for them. So do your friend a favor and share this video for them so they can get their dogs out of their house. And then subscribe. There's our subscribe hand signal if you like this video so you don't miss the next one. We like to give you guys free content that you guys can use to make you successful with your dog. So I'm Crystal. This is my husband Eric. We're with the Dog Psychology and Training Center, and we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.